Sorry. I was covered up. Hello, welcome back. Gotta go for the fifth. Ow. 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 It's gonna be a pale ale. Yay. Oh, it's not. This is an American Pilsner. I've had an American wheat ale and then 3 India pale ales, which are strong. I don't really care for them, but they're strong. It's like a strong, this is going to be tough to imagine. It's like a stronger version of a Samuel Adams. If you've ever had one of those, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. I don't know if they're all like that. I don't drink them that often. But we're going to do it. This is Pacific War number 1. That's I'll be honest, that's strong too. It's like they're all from Sam Adams, which I'm not against. I like a strong beer. So we're going to go ahead and start the video. If you've been paying attention, then you know things have been happening. Video. Sorry, I had to smack my dog in the butt.
As we've seen in the previous episodes, the Japanese Empire had decided on war with the West since the embargo enacted by the US in July 1941. The plans to simultaneously execute invasions on the Dutch East Indies, the Philippines and Malaya, as well as a preemptive attack on Pearl Harbor to destroy the American Pacific Fleet, had all been drafted back in September, with preparations carried out successfully by late November. By the way, don't forget to check out our podcast on the Pacific War. It has all the episodes in a long-form format with extra details. The link is in the description. If there's one item the historical lead of the Kings and Generals channel considers indispensable, it is the Ridge wallet made by the sponsor of this video, Ridge. With Christmas coming, you're probably looking for a perfect gift for your loved ones. Well, don't look any further. Ridge wallets are an awesome gift. Ridge has The United States, meanwhile, was also well aware that war was imminent, engaging in negotiations with Japan to delay this conflict as long as possible for their forces to adequately prepare. But on November 26th, the main Japanese strike force, under Vice Admiral Nagumo Chuichi, had already left its base heading to the Hawaiian Islands. Thus, time was running out for the United States. In Hawaii, the principal objective of the attack was Pearl Harbor, the main naval base for the Pacific Fleet of the US because of its geographical advantages, making it perfect for accommodating large warships and aircraft carriers. The Japanese planned to bombard these ships using dive bombers, high-altitude bombing, and torpedo attacks, hoping that the destruction of these vessels would be enough to render the Pacific Fleet inoperative. That's why they didn't target the submarine base or the oil yard that were also present in Pearl Harbor. This attack was so important to get an early win in the war that the planners had gone to the extent of preparing mock-ups and models on which the pilots could practice maneuvers, so much so that thousands of hours of airtime were spent in charting out the perfect plan of attack, while the Type 91 torpedoes of the era were modified with wooden fins to be effective in shallow waters. Yet the plan of Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku also had some flaws. One is that Pearl Harbor was a naval base, so rescue services could be quickly mobilized and many sailors would be on shore leave, thus reducing the amount of possible American casualties. Another drawback was that the American ships were moored in shallow waters, so most of the destroyed vessels could be salvaged and repaired with comparative ease. But the most important disadvantage was that the 3 aircraft carriers of the Pacific Fleet were absent from Pearl Harbor on the day of the attack. This was something that the Japanese command knew, as many spies had already acquired detailed reports of all vessels and schedules at Pearl Harbor, but they decided to attack anyways, even though these carriers were one of the most important objectives of the operation. Meanwhile, in the American base, Major General Walter Shaw.
If you've come up with the plan to attack, because there are 3 ships that you wish were there that you could take out, but they're not, you can't just throw the plans away and say, well, we gotta wait. You gotta hit with what you can, and hope that that's going to slow them down enough. So I understand why they followed through with it. I can also understand why they would be a little upset that it's not going to happen, but they're okay with it, kind of thing.
And Admiral Husband Kimmel were concerned about a possible attack on Pearl Harbor, believing that they could.
Husband Kimmel? What a name.
Could be subjected to a naval invasion or a sabotage operation. In that regard, all Army aircraft were bunched together for more protection at Wheeler Field, although this also made it an easier target for an air attack.
Yeah.
Munitions were secured, coastal artillery was put on alert, carriers started to rotate in and out of harbour, and ships and naval aircraft started to patrol in search of submarine threats to shipping. As their preparations show, they were definitely not expecting an air attack. On December 2nd, while cruising onwards, Nagumo received orders to start the final preparations for the attack on Pearl Harbor, scheduled to commence 5 days later. Although the Japanese commander was worried that they might encounter American ships on their way, none came, and by December 7th, the Japanese task force had finally reached its destination. Pre-dawn, the operation began with Japanese midget submarines starting to stalk some American minesweepers that were on patrol, attempting to shadow their prey into the safety of the harbor while the anti-submarine net was open. Meanwhile, Nagumo ordered the first wave of aircraft to prepare for takeoff at 06:15. Commanded by Fujita Mitsuo, the first 183 planes then steadily took off from their 6 aircraft carriers, some 250 miles north of Oahu. At 06:30, they adopted V formation and headed southwest towards Pearl Harbor. A couple of minutes later, some Japanese submarines were discovered, and one was sunk by the destroyer Ward, in what would be the first shots of the Pacific War. Around 0700, a radar post.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that we shot down a ship. I've been drinking too much. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Huh, interesting.
On the Opana Ridge, identified a group of more than 50 aircraft 132 miles north of Oahu, and then notified headquarters, which didn't receive the message because the personnel had left for breakfast. At the same time, Nagumo ordered the 168 aircraft of the second wave to take off, commanded by Shimazaki Shigekazu. Commander Fujita then sighted the northern shore of Oahu at 0740, relieved to see no enemy aircraft in front, and subsequently ordered his pilots to deploy into attack formation at 0749. Because of a misunderstanding of his orders, both the dive bombers and the torpedo planes simultaneously commenced their operations. Wheeler Field, one of the main objectives due to the concentration of most of the American aircraft, was first systematically bombarded by the dive bombers and then repeatedly shredded with gunfire by A6M Zeros. Most of the planes were completely destroyed as a result, but 12 pilots managed to get their fighters to lift off and engage the Japanese in dogfights. Meanwhile, torpedo forces split into 2 strings, with 16 planes closing on their targets northwest of Ford Island, and with 24 planes going south to Hickam Field and Battleship Row, intending to attack enemy battleships and aircraft. Some 11 fighters also turned east to attack Kaneohe, arriving at 0753 and completely neutralizing the American aircraft there. At the same time, the Ewa Marine Air Corps Station came under attack by 8 Zeros, leaving behind Wildcats blazing, scout bombers burning, and utility aircraft destroyed. Pearl Harbor itself was finally attacked at 07:55, 6 minutes after the assault commenced, and the Pacific Fleet would be caught unaware with a rude and violent awakening. As dive bombers started their bombardment over Hickam Field, torpedo planes nosed down on Pearl Harbor, leveling and dropping their deadly loads into the water. Northwest of Ford Island, the ex-battleship Utah and cruiser Raleigh reeled under torpedo explosions, while to the south of the island, the 1010 Pier experienced a slashing attack in which the cruiser Helena was hit. On Battleship Row, the battleship Oklahoma was the first one to get hit by torpedoes at 07:57. At this point, alarms had been sounded, and men started to pour from below decks to man the anti-aircraft guns. Soon after 0800, the Oklahoma received 3 more torpedo hits that left her capsizing, while the battleship Arizona was attacked with armor-piercing bombs that penetrated the deck and caused small fires. The repair ship Vestal nearby was also hit by these bombs, but it continued to fire against the Japanese planes even while engulfed in flames. And behind the Oklahoma, the battleship West Virginia was hit by 2 bombs that caused serious fires, and by a total of 7 torpedoes that opened 2 large holes and caused extreme damage. While on the other side, the battleship California was attacked by torpedo bombers that managed to hit her around 0805, tearing 2 huge holes that started flooding. As the Oklahoma capsized, Arizona was hit for a 4th time at 0806, piercing her forward magazine and causing such a powerful explosion that a fireball erupted from the ship, tearing her in half. Vestal's fires were suddenly extinguished due to the concussion, but oil from the ruptured tanks of the Arizona reignited the repair ship a couple of minutes later, forcing Commander Cassin Young to ground the Vestal. The West Virginia was also set on fire by fuel leaking from the destroyed Arizona, and she would end up sinking due to the damage. 429 men died that day in the Oklahoma, while the Arizona suffered 1,177 losses, including its 2 leading commanders. This was more than half of the total number of casualties the US would receive in this attack. At the same time, a recon squadron of SBDs coming from the aircraft carrier Enterprise, some 200 miles west of Oahu, arrived at the battle and was quickly engaged by the Japanese. But its efforts couldn't prevent their enemy from destroying half the aircraft at Hickam Field. Around 0810, one of the torpedo bombers managed to hit the battleship Nevada, causing minor flooding, but at the same time getting shot down by the American gunners. 10 minutes later, after some relentless bombardment and surrounded by the fires of the Arizona, the battleship Tennessee was hit by 2 bombs that luckily didn't cause serious damage, although fragments of the bombs were sent flying and ended up killing Captain Mervyn Bennion of the West Virginia. Around 0830, Japanese aircraft identified the remaining battleship, Pennsylvania, undergoing a refit at Dry Dock No. 1, and then started to bombard it for the next 15 minutes. Although one of the bombs caused large fires on the destroyers Cassin and Downs nearby, the Pennsylvania only got hit once and suffered no serious damage for it. At the same time, Shimizaki's second wave reached the coast of Oahu, but waited for the given command to attack, and at 0845, the California was struck by a bomb that started serious fires and caused considerable damage, although she continued to resist for the next few hours. While the Japanese planes made their last sorties with less intensity, the Nevada managed to control her flooding and then started to get away from the row. Around 0850, a momentary pause in the battering occurred as the second wave was ordered to commence its operations. Thus, over the Koolau Mountains, 78 dive bombers advanced directly towards Pearl Harbor, intending to continue the bombardment of the American vessels. Meanwhile, 18 bombers and 17 fighters attacked Kaneohe, and 27 bombers and some fighters took a wide sweep around the south of the mountains to attack Hickam Field. By 0900, the reign of death had resumed, but this time the US forces were determined to offer more resistance. On Kaneohe, The bombers made strikes on the hangars and managed to explode one of them, while their Zeros continued farther south to Bellows Field, shredding with machine gun fire the enemy aircraft there. On Hickam, the Japanese resumed their bombardment over the field, but were met with considerable opposition, so they continued towards Iwa and Wheeler. The main attack also resumed over Battleship Row, hitting the battleship Maryland at 0908 and causing a small flood, although she would continue to fight for another day. Around 0920, Pennsylvania's dry dock was also hit again, finally exploding the destroyers there and causing severe damage to the battleship. But the strong American resistance forced the Japanese aircraft to target whatever ship they could, starting more attacks over cruisers and destroyers, and not over their real objectives. So in the end, the second wave would be much less successful than the first one because of this fierce opposition.
Is anyone else surprised at how long the first and the second wave attacks were? I guess I didn't realize, this is hours. I didn't realize it was that long. I guess in my mind, I always pictured the first attack and just kind of coming in and clearing up everything. But I guess I didn't realize it was that long, let alone a second wave. Man. That could not have been... Well, this is going to break ground here. But I don't think this is a fun time. I'm putting that out there. I could be wrong.
Around 0950, however, the Nevada would be struck by 5 bombs as she steamed past the 1010 pier, thus suffering severe damage, although she would manage to safely return to shallow waters. The California would also succumb to its damage around 10, so her crew would have to abandon her and she would finally sink over the next 3 days. Commander Fujita would be the last aircraft to remain in Hawaii while he conducted his recon and assessment flight over Oahu, finally returning around 1100 hours. When he reached the aircraft carrier Akagi at 1300 hours, his report dissuaded Nagamo from ordering a third wave directed against American infrastructure like the submarine base or the oil yard. He decided this because they were running low on fuel and because they had lost the element of surprise, but this would prove to be a very bad decision in the future. The operation, however, was considered a huge success in Japan, damaging or sinking all 8 battleships among other vessels, damaging or destroying 219 American aircraft, and causing 3,497 casualties on the US with only minimal losses.
I gotta say, yeah, that's a success. Yeah. What? That we had such a thing called 4 midget submarines? 4 small people submarines.
Consequently, the Japanese had acquired naval superiority in the Pacific and could then continue with their plans of expansion. But before the smoke had drifted away in Hawaii, the American sleeping giant had awakened, ashamed and angered, and it wanted revenge. The Japanese war declaration had been scheduled to reach Washington before the attack on Pearl Harbor, but delays in the decodification and transcription of the message caused it to arrive 1 hour after the attack had commenced. The following day, FDR would then give his famous infamy speech, taking the role of the innocent victim and targeting Japanese treachery to urge Congress to declare war on the Empire of Japan.
I like how they put in claiming innocence. I like that. Just say how it is. We weren't innocent in all of it. But then again, we weren't innocent, but we didn't need to be attacked. They could have just said, okay, look, we're but then again, maybe we did need to be attacked because we were going to be supplying countries that they were going against. So, yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Thus, the Pacific War had begun. This week, we will cover the Japanese offensive directed against the resource.
Video's done. This was American Pilsner. I've had better. About that much left. I've had better. I've had worse. I think this is all the same company. Advent beers, crafted for the holidays. I'm going to go ahead and finish this. Okay. This is a birthday gift. Because nothing says your family loves you more than giving you alcohol. I've had a few people ask me if I have problems. I don't. I only drink when I film, which is like 3 to 4 days a week, 3 to 5 videos a day. My drinking's done. Oh, this gnat is... I will burn this house down just to kill you. Alright, I'm going to end this video here. Just imagine I said something very, like, good right now. Like, and now I want you to tell all your friends the facts that I just told you. Make them up. It doesn't have to be real.